probably a lot of you, at least by now, those of you who know Michelle and I very well know that we love to hike. We do a lot of that. We like to pick new spots. We have our favorites that we go to repetitively, but we also like to pick new spots and go and just be out in nature and walk and just feel the peace of being out there. There's just something about being out in the wilderness that I think connects with a deep longing that we have in our hearts. And Michelle and I, we like to hike different types of terrain. So our favorite type is the mountains or other thickly forested areas. That's definitely number one for us. But even just last month, we hiked the Palo Duro Canyon in the panhandle of Texas. And that is true desert. It is dry and dusty and rocky and lots of cacti and rattlesnakes, as we found out. But yet, even the desert has a certain beauty to it, if you've ever been out in it. But the reason that we like wilderness hikes is that we get to pick our spot and pick the time that we're going to hike, and when we're done, we can pile in the car and drive out of there and go back to civilization and the comforts of home. All right? But it's a different story when it comes to the wilderness seasons of life. When life suddenly dumps you in the middle of a desert, and it's not one of your choosing, and it doesn't fit with your timeline, and worst, you can't find your way out of it. That's a different story. And I think that one of the hardest parts of wilderness seasons like that, it isn't just the need that's going unmet, at least for now. It's not just the problem that's still unresolved in your life. It's the confusion that goes with it all. It's all of the questions that we're asking during those times. Like, why is this happening to me? Why is this taking so long? What is going on? Why won't God make things better, right? How did I end up here? And when will I get out of here? So the wilderness is not just what's happening around you in your circumstances. The wilderness out there gets in here, right? And invades our minds. And it becomes the landscape of our hearts during that time. It becomes part of our inner world. And so the wilderness fills us with questions. And all the questions that we're asking during a wilderness time of life are very normal questions. They're questions that are very much a part of our humanity. And so, the loss of a job can really put you into a wilderness season, or confusion over your career. And you start wrestling with that. And it's not just that the job is gone. It's not just that the paycheck is gone. That's a big part of it. But it's all the questions that you start to ask that occupy your thoughts. Like, why would God allow, all of the effort, all of the training and the years of preparation that I put into that job to kind of go to waste? Why would this happen to me now? Why didn't God, if he was going to close that door, why hasn't he opened a new one yet? Have I wasted my life? And you start questioning your identity. Well, who am I now that I don't have that title anymore? And then, of course, there's the financial insecurity of it. And how am I going to pay my debts and my bills? But maybe it's not a job loss. Maybe it's a crumbling relationship in your life. Maybe you've been hurt in an important relationship, maybe even betrayed. And man, that's hard. And again, the questions that circle around in your head and sometimes keep you awake at night, right? Like, why would someone I trust do this to me? Why did God let this happen? What does this mean for my future? How am I ever going to recover from this? Because when someone hurts you, when someone betrays you, it doesn't just hurt, it doesn't just make you mad, it confuses you. and you're just trying to make sense of it all. You're trying to figure out, you want to have some rational reason that you can put your finger on as to why they would do what they did. And often you just can't find that. There is no rational reason. So when you're in the wilderness, sometimes all you see is the sand. It's just sandy and dusty and dirty, because when our world is not right, when something in our world isn't right, like it shrinks. Have you noticed that? How your world just gets very small when it's not going right? Because all of your focus is zoomed in on your pain or the need or those confusing questions that are going around in your head, and it becomes almost the totality of your reality. And we can't see the other people around us. Not really. We can't see them really. We can't see the blessings that are there in our lives. It's all shrunk down to the problem. And God knows this about us. And he knew that would be the case with the people of Judah in the prophet Isaiah's time, as they were about to go into this very long, hard wilderness season of being exiled away from their homeland. And God knew that would just be one particular season, but that there would be future occasions on which his people, whether as individuals or collectively, would find ourselves trudging through a barren wilderness period. And all of the inevitable questions that would swirl around in our heads and trouble our minds. And right there, in that moment, in that moment where our vision has narrowed down and all we're seeing is sand and confusion, Isaiah interrupts us. In chapter 40, Isaiah chapter 40, he interrupts us. He interrupts that tunnel vision we've gotten ourselves into, and he expands our frame of reference with cosmic imagery of the vastness of God and his understanding of his universe. In verse 12, Isaiah says, "Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, or with the breadth of his hand marked off the heavens? Who has held the dust of the earth in a basket, or weighed the mountains on the scales and the hills in a balance?" See, as we are wrestling with our thoughts and we're confused and we're trying to understand what's going on in our lives, Isaiah here reminds us that the God that we're questioning effortlessly holds galaxies together. And he knows everything there is to know about them. And so when I find myself in a wilderness of my own, I usually feel like I know exactly what God should do to fix it. How about you? And when we are certain that we know the way things should be in our lives, I realize that the last thing we want to hear is that actually we don't know. But that's exactly what Isaiah is implying here. He's telling us, listen, there's wisdom in knowing that you don't know. Knowing that you don't know. Because just because we don't see a purpose in what we're going through doesn't mean there isn't one. And so if God were actually small enough for us to fully understand him in the wilderness, he wouldn't be big enough to carry us through it, much less to bring us out of it. So we don't need a little God. We don't need a little God who thinks just like we do. We need, and we have, a great big God who is far beyond our comprehension, right? And so Isaiah is challenging us to consider our lack of understanding and how our little understanding stacks up against God's vast understanding. He knows exactly how many gallons of water fill all the oceans and seas and lakes and ponds on earth. And if they were all that water was somehow collected together in one place, it would be just a tiny drop in the palm of his hand. And God knows how many grains of sand are on all the beaches and all the deserts of the world. He knows exactly the weight and mass of every hill and mesa and mountain. And he examines them like you and I might something on our desktop, something that we're looking at under a magnifying glass. And he's looking at them, and the whole vast, expanding universe that we're a part of is no wider than his hand. So he sees it all, and he sees it at the same time. And he goes on in verse 13 to say, who can fathom the Spirit of the Lord? Or what? Or instruct the Lord, right? Who can instruct the Lord as his counselor? Whom did the Lord consult to enlighten him? And who taught him the right way? Who was it that taught him knowledge or showed him the path of understanding? See, believe it or not, God doesn't need our advice. And, which of us thinks that we could actually tell God something he doesn't already know? Do we really presume to think that our understanding of our lives and how it should go is superior to his? Well, I got to be honest. Sometimes I do. And sometimes I am convinced that God just doesn't understand. And so I help him out by explaining to him exactly what's happening. And I present all of my arguments, which are pretty airtight in my mind, as to what actually needs to happen. And I tell him how my plan is actually better than his plan. And those rhetorical questions that Isaiah asks in that verse, that what they're doing is they're really confronting us in what is one of our assumptions that we tend to make, one of our deeply held assumptions that maybe we don't voice very often, or maybe ever, but we do think it. And that is, if I were in charge, I would do it better than God. Right? Yeah, you've thought it. I remind myself sometimes of Jim Carrey and Bruce Almighty, giving everybody what they ask for, answering every prayer with a yes, and causing mass chaos, and greed shooting off the charts, mass pandemonium, because only God has the wisdom to handle omnipotence. To handle omnipotence, you need omniscience, to know all, to understand all. And that's something I don't have. And so when I'm in a wilderness and I'm confused about why my life is not going well and it's not working out the way that I want it to, and I can't seem to figure out a solution, and it's not that God isn't doing what's best for me. It's that I don't understand what he's doing for me. I don't comprehend in that moment what actually is best for the big picture of my life and the lives of the people around me. But God does. And so what seems like a mistake is actually a mystery. It's a mystery. I mean, the life of faith is full of mystery. God is mysterious, and his ways are mysterious to us mere mortals. And so in the wilderness, like from where we stand, life feels unfair. From where we stand, God's actions, or sometimes his inaction, makes no sense. From where we stand, everything feels out of place and out of kilter and uncertain. But God doesn't stand in our place. He doesn't stand where we stand. He sees things from a much higher perspective than we do. In chapter 45 of Isaiah, God speaks in his own words this time. He says, "Woe to those who quarrel with their maker, those who are nothing but potsherds among the potsherds on the ground. Does the clay say to the potter, 'What are you making?' Does your work say, 'The potter has no hands'?" Now, if a potsherd, if you're not aware, is a broken piece of pottery. And in a sense, compared to God, That's what you and I are. We are his creations. He is our creator. He is our maker. He made us with love in every detail. And so we are his work, the work of his hands. And not only are we his creations, we're broken creations. We're like a clay jar that's fallen off the table and shattered into pieces. Our hearts have been fragmented. And yet, we argue with the one who created us as if we know better than him how he should form us, how he should manage our lives, right? And I know that all of us find ourselves in that place at some point because we get frustrated. And when we get frustrated, we begin to challenge God's understanding and God's expertise at what he does. And we're like, no, God, it's not supposed to be this way. Right? Like, this is not the way my life should be right now. What are you doing? Like, you're the potter, but you've forgotten how to pot. I need you to get this right. It sounds presumptuous because it is. The next verse, verse 11, says, "This is what the Lord says, the Holy One of Israel and its Maker, concerning things to come. Do you question me about my children or give me orders about the work of my hands? It is I who made the earth and created mankind on it. My own hands stretched out the heavens. I marshaled their starry hosts." What is he saying? He's saying, remember who I am. Remember who I am. Okay, you don't understand what I'm doing, but I do. Just like I knew what I was doing when I mapped out the vast expanse of space and put every galaxy and solar system and planet and moon in place. Just like when I created the earth and mankind and you. I knew what I was doing. And so, do you really think that if I have the wisdom to do all of that I'm bumbling around and messing up your life? And then he famously adds this in chapter 55, verses 8 and 9. He says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways," what? Higher, right? Higher than yours. "And my thoughts than your thoughts." See, you and I, we see things at ground level, don't we? I mean, we're seeing things right here at ground level and imperfectly at that. But God not only sees perfectly at ground level, he sees perfectly from 45,000 feet up. So he sees the big picture of things that I just can't see. And so what I hear God saying to me in these verses is, he's saying, Chris, you've got to learn to accept that you don't know what you don't know, but that I do, and trust that I know what I'm doing. And he's not saying this to humiliate us, but to humble us. And there's a difference. He's not trying to shame us for our limited understanding. He's actually relieving us of the burden of carrying the weight of the world on our own shoulders. Our shoulders aren't broad enough to carry the weight of the world. He's actually trying to free us from the burden of the responsibility of control, of being in control, things that we were never meant to control. Okay, and so the more that we pass judgment on God when we don't think he's doing it right, and we think he's messing up our lives, the more we do that, the more we actually add to the burden we're carrying. It gets heavier. I don't understand everything, but God does. I can't carry the weight of the world. I can't even carry sometimes the weight of my own life. But God can. And God says here, listen, not only are my thoughts higher than your thoughts, he says, my ways are higher than your ways. See, I think this is a big part of our struggle when we're in a wilderness, is that our goals for our lives are different sometimes than God's goals for our lives. So I don't know about you, but I kind of like being comfortable. And we are so comfort driven, right? It's like we just want life to feel good. We just want, things to be easy, smooth, and comfortable. And really, most of us, we'd be good with that. It's like, just give me comfort. Just give me a comfortable, easy life, and I'll be happy with that. But God has much nobler purposes for our lives than that. Like he doesn't just want us to be comfortable. He wants us to be good. He wants us to do good. He wants us to care about the things that really matter. He wants us to see the things that are truly important and pursue those things. He wants us to think beyond our own comfort to the needs of other people. So God is thinking about what the world needs from us. And he is out to equip us to be able to accomplish that very purpose. And the process of doing that, the process of equipping us for the purpose of making a difference in the world, isn't always comfortable. If I could leave Isaiah for a moment and go to the New Testament, to James chapter 1. James says, beginning at verse 2, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds." Or we can say, whenever you find yourself in a wilderness in life, consider it pure joy, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be what? Mature and complete. Okay, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. This is brilliant, because when we wonder what God is up to, and we're struggling to understand why things aren't working, and we're confused, and we're wondering what possible good could come out of what's happening to me right now and where I am in life right now, well, this is it. That the barren times that we go through are trials. They are tests. How many of you would buy a product that's not been tested? Right? How many of you would take a medication that's not been tested? A supplement that's never been tested. See, we want our medications and supplements to be tested, don't we? In fact, we want them third-party tested, because we don't trust the manufacturer to do the testing. We're figuring they're going to hedge on the results. We want a third party to tell us if that thing actually works or not before we take it. We scour over reviews of products that we're interested in buying. Why? Because we want to know, did they pass the test of usage by real people in real situations? Do they actually do what I need them to do before I'm going to buy that product? And through extensive testing and retesting, companies keep improving their products, making them better and better, theoretically. But God's work in our lives, God's work in shaping us, in forming us, it didn't end in the womb. It wasn't over at our birth. See, it continues on every day, every year of our lives. I just turned 59 years old, and God is still forming me, still shaping me, still working with the clay that I am. And God, in his infinite wisdom, knows that the trials of those in-between seasons of life present incredible opportunities for growth. And James says that trials that test your faith produce what? Perseverance, right? Perseverance. And you may think, well, what if I don't want perseverance? What if I'd rather have happiness? What if I'd rather have peace? What if I'd rather just feel settled in life? And I really don't feel like I need perseverance. See, again, God, in his wisdom that far exceeds our own, says, well, you may not want perseverance, but you need it. And the reason you need it is because, he says, that it actually has a very important work to do in you. And what is that work? Well, persevering in your faith through hard times is accomplishing something in you. It is, he says, it's bringing you to a place of maturity and completeness. Or you could say wholeness. So the perseverance of your faith helps you to become mature and whole as a person. And those are important qualities if you want your life to amount to anything. Okay. And then he adds in the next verse, verse 5, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. So if you still aren't vibing with what James is saying in this paragraph, if you still just don't get it, you're like, I just don't understand that. I don't see why in the world I would want trials or wilderness seasons of my life. Ask God for wisdom. Specifically, the wisdom to have the right perspective of your trials. If we will ask him, if we will truly seek understanding, then he will give us the wisdom to understand that the wilderness isn't intended to make us miserable, but to make us mature. Okay? And the wisdom of that perspective gives you the ability to actually have joy, even in those wilderness seasons. Remember, James started out that way. He said, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds. I don't know about you, but joy isn't the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about trials or when I think about being in a wilderness season. I don't really equate that with joy. And so how in the world does James expect us to actually be joyful when we're feeling frustrated and confused? Well, through wisdom. Through wisdom. See, the thing is that we think of joy as an outcome. We think of joy as the outcome of things going the way we want them to go. And in that, we confuse joy with happiness. Joy is not an outcome, but a posture. Joy is a posture. It is a way of going through what we're going through. So joy is not what we eventually get once we're through the trial. It is what we need to get through the trial, to be resilient through the trial. Joy is what you have when you understand that the wilderness that you're in doesn't mean God doesn't love me. That doesn't mean that I'm a failure and that I'm destined for bad things to happen to me. But joy is the posture I can choose in the wilderness of life with the wisdom of understanding how God can use it to mature me, to strengthen me, to grow me so that he can use me for great things. How he's ready to meet me in my wilderness and do his good work in me so that he can do his good work through me. That is the insight of the wise. And that's something that's yours for the asking. That's what he says. You ask for wisdom, God will give it to you. So if you've been asking for God to take away the trial, if you've been asking for God to get you out of the wilderness you're in and God so far has not been granting those prayers, shift what you're asking for. Shift your prayer requests. And instead of asking for outcomes, ask for the wisdom to trust that God is maturing you and growing you and strengthening you in essential ways through this wilderness that you're in. See, because guys, listen, in every trial that you go through, God intends for you to come out the other side of that trial having learned that you are stronger than you ever thought you were. Having learned that you are more creative and resilient than you ever believed. Having learned that your faith is more robust and life-sustaining than you ever realized it was. His ways are higher than our ways. His goals for our lives are higher than our goals. Eventually, every wilderness confronts us with the same decision. And that decision is, will I trust God only when I understand? Or will I trust the God who sees what I can't see? Will I trust that his intentions for me are actually good, even when life doesn't feel good? Will I trust that he knows better than I do how to achieve that growth and maturity and strength in me that he wants to build? Will I trust him through the wilderness? However long he has me there. See, Isaiah gives voice to the people of Judah stuck in the wilderness of their exile in chapter 49, verse 4. They say, but my work seems so useless. You know, sometimes you've been trying to fix the problem. You keep trying. You're doing all you know how to do, and it just seems so useless. I've spent my strength for nothing, right? And to no purpose. Right? Nothing's working out, no matter how much effort and thought I give it. And he says, yet, I leave it all in the Lord's hand. I will what? I will trust God. I just want you to say that to yourself right now. I will leave it all in the Lord's hand. Say it with me. I will leave it all in the Lord's hand. I will trust God, okay, for my reward. See, in the desert, guys, it's not clarity that we need nearly as much as humility and trust. That's what will sustain us in the wilderness. Faith doesn't mean that you have all the answers you want. It means that you trust the one who does. So the next step for us is to trust God with those answers that you can't find. All those things that have been swirling around in your head and keeping you up at night, trust God with the answers you can't find. Maybe today you've been carrying questions with you that have gone unanswered for some time. Why did that loss happen? What does it mean for my future? Why healing hasn't come that you've been praying for? Why the one door closed and another hasn't opened? Why the barren wilderness is just stretched on as long as it has? And notice, I know Isaiah, he didn't promise explanations for all of it. But he does remind us who God is. And that the one who is holding the world in his hand is also holding you. And even though you don't understand what he's doing right now, he does. And with wisdom and with joy, you will pass the test. And you will come out stronger. Let's pray together. Father, the wilderness is sometimes such an unpleasant place when it's not a place of our choosing. And God, we find ourselves maybe right now today in a place where there's been a long wilderness that we've been walking through, and it just seems so endless. And no apparent solutions or answers are in sight. And it feels futile to sometimes continue to try just because it seems that all of the things we've tried have failed. So Lord, in these times, we want to come to you as we are right now in humility and say, Lord, I don't understand. I don't really get what you're doing in my life right now. But I'm not going to challenge you and question you. I'm going to trust you instead. Because I know that you are good, and I know that you are wise, and I know that you have good intentions for me. So Lord, right now, I just want to lay it down, lay the burden down, the burden of answers, the burden of control, the burden of frustration. And instead, just lay that at your feet. Let you carry that. Look up to you and say, Lord, I trust you today. I will trust you tomorrow. I will trust you the next day. And I will continue to walk forward in joy, knowing, Lord, that you are doing something important in my life right now that I can't see. Because you want to use me in your kingdom for your mission in ways that I can't even fathom. Thank you for that assurance, Lord. Give me your joy, Holy Spirit, today. Give me your joy. Your joy is greater than my frustration. I pray in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen.